So thank you so much for agreeing to have this impromptu interview with me.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. So tell me about like senior high school, your educational background, university, if you have a master's or
Okay, thank you again. Well, I went to senior high at Pope John Senior High.
hey, you're a PJ boy.
PJ.
Pojo back.
Yeah, Papa.
Let me write it down.
Yeah, the real Dasibris. Yeah, I originally had applied to go to St. Peter's.
Oh.
But two of my older brothers had gone to St. Peter's, and the other two of us, we went to Pope John.
Oh.
So my brother Majid was already in Pope John. He was in his final year when I went. My father thought it would be good to go to at least a school where my brother is already at. And also, I always had the desire to do arts, but I didn't apply for arts when I was going to school. I'd applied to St. Peter's General Arts or something, but my father and the family thought I had potential to be an artist.
Oh, so they believed you.
Yeah, so
no wonder. Here, they don't give the arts people, that.
I know, but to be fair enough, my family, like all my siblings, they're either like my older brother Aziz, he specializes in neurosurgery in Cuba. He's a doctor. The other two are into engineering. The others are lawyers, and so come on, being at the end of the day, I'm like the ninth born. I'm the ninth born, so sometimes we just need to sprinkle a bit of disaster in the family. So.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's how come I ended up.
So you grew up in a family of 9?
No, we're 10.
Yeah,
biological 10, but in terms of my father was a big family man, so like I grew up with many brothers, cousins. So it was a very large household, which is good actually. As a family, when you're growing up, it allows you to learn a lot of things. And the most interesting thing about my high school was that when I was in Pope John, I was a day student. So I was in a hostel called Terrazzo Hostel. Just sharing walls with the school. So don't ask me what I used to jump the wall. Like most secondary school people. A few times when I was in final.
But why they do? That's so weird. Because a school that is outside Accra.
I know, because those days they used to admit so many students. So when we went to school first year, we were like 1,200 and something. And by the time we finished school, we were like 700 and something. Those days they used to sack you. If you get one fail or if you get 3 fails, they'll sack you.
Wow.
And also by mandates, the school was supposed to admit students from the region who were from like deprived schools and all that. So they admitted so many people, and as the terms were going by, students were dropping. And the visual arts class was only one also. So by the time I went to school, because they had given me admission, because I was changing from St. Peter's to Pope John, it took such a while.
Yeah.
By the time I got Pope John and they gave me admission, the name, they didn't get the name right. They had the admission letter on it said Ibrahim Mahama. And I was like, where from Yirinchi? I'm not a Yirinchi, I'm a Mahama. I'm not a Yirinchi. So
that's so weird.
It was something. So we had to take
the hard time.
I'm telling you, at the time,
the
Kofredia Polytechnic principal, he was helping us. I have an uncle, may so rest in peace. He was helping us with the admission. So when we took it back and then they worked it out, eventually when I went to high school, there was no longer room in a boarding house. And also the visual arts class, there was no room in it.
So you were one of those that carried the table and the chair and adjusted?
No. Even with me, it was not even possible. So what they did was that they put me in the G arts class. So I was doing French, economics, and like these subjects. And the headmaster told me, look, the only thing I can do for you is that if you find someone in the visual arts class
who wants to swap.
So I went there
to
I went there to announce and then came back to sit in the class. And then one day I was just sitting in the class and one skinny boy came along with some senior. I'm looking for Ibrahim, and I said me, and I said, but no Ibrahim Mahama.
Just to be sure.
Just to be sure. And then we went to the headmaster's office, and then I even abandoned my books in the GS class. I just went straight to the visual arts class to say, and that was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks before like vacation. The exams was very close. And that's how come I became an artist. Without that, I don't know where I would have been. Maybe I would have had a different future now.
So at the university, what did you study?
I studied painting. Yeah, so when I was in, because Pope John was peculiar in the sense that they do picture making and sculpture. And all the...
So you will recommend PJ to people who actually want to pursue, to young people who want to pursue?
Yes. Because at the time, our teachers, and even till now, I think a lot of them are still there, they also trained in K University at the Fine Arts Department. They did, a lot of them did painting and sculpture. So they were teaching us in relation to what they had learned in the university. So they were telling us about university, like the program, things like that. So even already at secondary school, I knew that when I go to uni, I want to do. And particularly also when we're in uni in like first, second year, we used to do these nude female figure drawings. And our teacher told us one day, and I was like, I thought before I was thinking about doing architecture or other things. But that day when he told us that story, and then all the boys were like, that is the course we are going to do at the university. So I tell you, when we went to tech first year, our class, painting and sculpture, Pope John was the highest population, followed by Prempe, and then Presec, and then TIMAS. Pope John students alone in our class were like 30 something.
So you guys, I would say that your teachers actually mentored you guys from senior high school. That they drove the passion.
Yeah, I really felt it. So for me, at high school, I already knew that. You know, when you were doing a course in high school, like, no, for us it was life.
Like
it was a life and death matter.
You have been coached.
Yes. So when I went to uni, I was
you hardly have that hill.
But Pope John, I think I always tell people that if I could go back to any time in my life to relive it, it would be that period, that 3-year period.
I would never want to relive my senior high school year.
Oh, I would. Senior high was the best time of my life.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the best time.
I can't see.
Yeah. It was a good time. It really helped me to form my thinking. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. So about let's say your you just told me how to pronounce the
biennial.
I like the
Biennale.
Yes, the Biennale. I should be able to say my picture is half the time. This is fun. The Biennale, the Pavilion at 2019 Venice Biennale, and all that. Like, how did this start? Like I was saying earlier on, we have people in the art scene or people passionate about art who are drawing at home. How did you get such a big opportunity, knowing that you're not the only artist in Ghana?
Yeah. No, but the Venice Biennial in 2019 was actually myself, Jonah Confra, he's a Ghanaian artist who works in the UK. Lynette Boachiyadom, who's a Ghanaian artist who also works and lives in the UK. Selassie Sosu, who is an artist who is at Winnipeg. She teaches, she went to K University. Felicia Aban, who's like the first female photographer in Ghana. And myself. So it was the
But
Venice
these
Biennial.
are people, I would say, really big shots.
Yeah.
How did you?
So, and the exhibition was curated by Nano Foriata, a female curator from Ghana, and it was designed by Sir David Ajayi, the architect who's building the cathedral. Yeah. The reason being that the biennial happens every 2 years. In the art world, it's like the World Cup. It's like Ghana Black Stars going to the World Cup.
Then that was major.
Yeah, it's major. So it happens every 2 years, and there are 2 aspects of the biennial. So there are 3 aspects actually. They have the international exhibition, which they invite the Venice Biennial invites independent artists to come and show their work in it. And then they have the national pavilion. So every country has a chance to select artists like World Cup to go and play. So they will say that, you should represent Ghana. Sometimes they will take one artist, sometimes it will be a group show. So in the case of Ghana, it was the first time that we were ever going to the biennial. That was our first.
So why you?
No, but in my case, I had participated 2 times before. I played it 2 times before. I was the first artist and youngest artist in the history of it in 120 years to participate in it in 2015.
So let's talk about that one. How did you get the gig, should I say?
It's just through work, because I had focused a lot of my work earlier on experimentations. So when I was in uni, I was focused more on like this drawing that I was showing. Like I used to make some of these.
Am I correct if I say they have any for realist paintings?
Yeah, it's realistic. Yeah. So when I used to make drawings for people, like families. If a friend of mine said, "Can you draw my girlfriend?" things like that. So I used to make some of those drawings, and then whatever money I'll get from it, 100 cedis, 200, 500 cedis, I'll gather it and buy materials and experiment. Because in art,
I hear the materials are expensive.
They're expensive, but it's not just traditional materials. Sometimes as an artist, you want, like for instance, I started using these charcoal sacks. And those days, now the material is like 7 cities. But when I started buying it back in those days, it was 1 city. So what I used to do was I used to go to warehouses and then I would buy new ones, and then I'll go and give it to the charcoal sellers in the market, and then I'll take their old ones to be able to produce this one.
So that they will just pack the rest.
Yes. So I did that for a while, and I had an international exhibition in London in 2014.
You know, that's the gist. How did you get it?
It's true independent work, because in art is about being able to express yourself, and also.
Wait. Yeah. So you didn't meet anyone? Like, I want to know, did you fill a form online?
No, I was in my final year exhibition at one of the projects I was doing in K University. There was a big exhibition happening in London at the time in a space called the Saatchi Gallery. And the Saatchi is like one of the biggest art institutions in the world. It made a lot of young artists practices careers in the UK in the 80s and the early 90s. So the man, Charles Saatchi, he had seen my work through a friend of mine here in Ghana. I said, oh, can you send a picture? Yeah, can you send us some photographs, more photographs to look at?
So wait, this friend of yours,
yeah,
was he like we don't have to mention, was he like some big guy, or how did he
they're just people that were working in the art field, like
okay,
outside the country.
Oh, so your friend was outside the country?
Yes, working there. Yeah, working there, like doing advisory, curating.
So your friend was also in the art scene?
In the art scene.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's a woman. So when she was here at the time, and then she was friends with some of these people, and they said, oh, can you send us some photographs of artists or people doing things here? But if you're not ready, like for instance, if my work wasn't ready at the time and they sent the picture, they wouldn't. It was this is not interesting. But when they saw the image, like, oh, this is very interesting. We're doing an exhibition. Maybe we would want him to show. To produce a major work for the exhibition, and then I did. So when that exhibition happened, suddenly everyone was like, "Oh wow!" Like we didn't know this artist was there. Blah 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 blah. And then the Venice curator saw the work, and it was like, "Oh, I really like to have this
so
work
I
in
get
the
it
exhibition."
Because the name of the place, you said Amachi.
No, Saatchi.
Asachi.
Yes,
Sorry,
Saatchi.
I'm Ghanaian. Asachi. So because the Asachi thing was very big, am I right to say you had curators from around the world? So
Yes.
once you just popped up there, it was like that was the boom.
Yes.
People just started discovering your works after that.
Yes.
Oh, so does it still do we still have these exhibitions now?
Yeah. Like since the Saatchi and since the Venice, and Venice is like the biggest you can have. So I was very young. I was like so young that I was in school when I had a Venice. Normally, you are either dead or very old when that happens. So when I remember those days when I even went to Venice and I was producing their work. I was there. I worked with a lot of guys here in producing my work, and I wanted to travel with them to Venice. I made passports for them.
How did you afford that?
It's part of the work. So eventually, they didn't give them the visas. They thought, visa
they're going to run
away, blah, 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 things like that. But I worked with university students there to make the work happen. And as I was working with them and everyone else was passing by looking at me working in the place, when you come to Venice, there are a lot of young black guys who are selling fake Gucci bags on the streets, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of people thought that I was some immigrant. No one imagined that I was because a young black guy, like, he's not an artist. Normally, if I was older, then people would think that, oh, he's some old artist that now the world is beginning to. But a young guy coming from school, So it was kind of very interesting how it happened. And ever since that exhibition happened, it really opened up a lot of opportunities and doors. And 2 years on, I was invited to an exhibition called Documenta. And Documenta happens in Germany every 5 years. It's like the Olympics of the art world. Yes, that's true. It's like the Olympics. Yeah, Documenta is major. And Documenta happens in the city.
So is it bigger than the Venice?
It's bigger. So Documenta is like the Olympics. So if you're looking at the history of Documenta is such a way that during the Holocaust, a lot of artists fled Germany and Europe because of fascism, and they went to settle in America. So after Hitler and Mussolini and all those guys were
when democracy broke through.
Yes. Germany, there was a German professor called Amador. He established an exhibition which was supposed to bring back faith into the German system, like proposing new ideas. All those artists who were doing interesting works which Hitler thought that, oh, these guys, they are not good artists. Like the sacks that I'm producing. Hitler said, oh no, that is not art. Making the portrait is art, and you have to make the portrait in a certain way to somehow salute the regime, things like that.
With their signs.
Things like that. So when Documento was established to somehow reinstill faith in humanity in terms of hope in Germany, and it happened, they chose a place called Kassel, because Kassel was almost like a military base for Hitler. So during the war, the end of the war, the Allied forces, America, Britain and all that, they bombed a lot of the German cities, and particularly Kassel was like almost erased. So Kassel was the place they chose. So once every 5 years, they bring somehow the most intellectual or interesting artists who are doing interesting ideas, revolutionary ideas, to somehow come and remind us about this thing, why it is important to somehow push freedom and explore new ideas of hope, blah, blah, blah.
You were the young guy from Ghana.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so this exhibition happened between Kassel in Germany and Athens, Greece. So the curator who did that particular version, he was interested in the history between Greece and Germany. You know, after the Second World War, Greece bailed out Germany financially. But during the Greek austerity, that's why the Greeks were angry, because Germany had the chance to bail them out, but Europe didn't want to do it. So they wanted to bring us back to that idea that we need to remember.
So it was a whole lot of politics around.
Yeah. Art is political. Art is not just because I've woken up and I can draw a human being, so I can just draw it. So no, it's a serious thing. And when people are interested in your work, it's one, because they're interested in the ideas in the work, and secondly, the embodiment of the ideas in the form that manifests within it. So for instance, if you're drawing human beings, some people make portraits of just people, like the portraits I used to make for people. I didn't really consider that as art. I made them for people because it was something they wanted. But in another sense, in my independent practice, I can go to the studio and make specific kinds of portraits. Maybe I'm painting victims from a certain
communicate a particular message.
That's when art comes into being. Art is not just because you could hold a pencil and draw. No.
So you feel people should have something they want to communicate through their art.
Yes. People need to spend time.
So like a niche. You should
not
find
a niche per se. They need to understand why they are doing the work that they are doing. It's always the why, and that why will lead you to building a body of work that address one thing. So when people look at your body of work, they're like,
so you find your place.
Yes, this artist is interested in maybe the history of factory building, or maybe a history of the Holocaust, but through that he uses his technique to make this kind of painting. So there's an artist called Anson Kefa, and he makes these paintings which somehow take us back to the Holocaust. But we see the way the paintings are made. He will take a stick and then put it in a painting. The colors are so thick. There is some gravity to it, you know.
Well, what if I like anime?
You can also use that. There are a lot of artists who also use anime in making their work. And 3D, virtual reality, all those things are possibilities. Yeah. Being an artist is not just, sometimes these days they are even like mathematicians, doctors, scientists who are artists, because they bring in their experience into making art forms that ordinarily, if you are trained in an art school, you wouldn't be able to produce that kind of art. So art is not just reduced down to people who can draw. Even the market women who are in the market, they can
those that stand by the traffic.
No, it's not about the drawing aspect. It's the way they practice, the way they arrange things, the way they think.
So the drawing is just something small.
Yeah, the drawing is an aspect.
It's an
aspect of it. Just that in a curriculum of, let's say, arts traditional schools, people are quite conservative in the sense that they still somehow go back to the drawing, to the hand, because they always say that like what can your hand do? But what you have to realize is that our hand doesn't produce everything. The paper that you are using, you are writing on it and all that. This, you didn't produce this. You didn't produce this. So what makes you think because you can use your pen to write on it, suddenly you are talented? But there are people who produce all those things. So we take a lot for granted. So the labor of people through the things that we use, we have to consider that when we are thinking about what we make. And that's what makes the work that I do distinct, in the sense that when people are looking at it internationally, like, this artist, his work is very sensitive because it tackles global issues at this
Yeah, I
level.
do realize most of your arts are actually like communicating a message, a story. You're trying to tell us about the history of a particular place and stuff like that. So let's dive right into your Savannah Center for Contemporary Art. What's it about?
So SCCA is an art space, cultural institution, repository, if you like. I started thinking about it when I was in uni back in 2009-10. So when I finished, I thought I could build some kind of a studio in Tamale and then make my work. Because I was born in Tamale, but I didn't grow up there.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up in Accra from the age of 2. So I always went back for holidays.
So you're from Tamale?
I'm from Tamale, I was born there. So when I was finishing uni, I thought maybe it would be interesting to go back because rarely do you find artists with my educational background and everything who have decided consciously to settle there. So after uni, I did my service and then went back.
Where did you do your service?
At the Autism Center.
Interesting.
Yeah, it used to be around here, but now they've moved. Yeah, so I did some voluntary work there before.
So you volunteer, Aquarium Agency has been pushing volunteering and career development services for about 6 years now. We find most of the young people thinking it's unnecessary.
Yes,
I'm so glad you
I
mentioned
did a lot of voluntary
volunteering.
work when I was in.
Have you guys heard it? He did a lot of voluntary work.
I always tell the young people, what just sit around idle?
I know, right?
Go and volunteer, do something.
And these days, there's this issue. You see, in their quest to find jobs, they are still dormant. Because what they usually do these days is that they would rather sit home and send out 200 CVs. But at the time you are doing that, you are still dormant because you are not gaining any experience.
I tell people, go to a wood factory and go and learn. You guys go and volunteer. Oh, let me carry this, let me carry that. If you want to be great, you have to learn to sell. And it's not always that you would get, every meal they will just give you stipend or take money. The time that you're going back and forth, though you are not earning money, you are earning a great knowledge of, there's some kind of actualization process that you're going through, So after the service and I went back to uni and I started working and I did my first international research. The money that I earned from that show, I decided that why not start this art.
Then it was big money. I know you can't mention it, but
it wasn't big money.
Enough to start up something like that.
No, just to start a foundation.
Oh, okay.
When you want to put up a building, it's not like how many people have started buildings in the country that's taking 20 years to do. So that's how I did it. The SEC small. So every year, like for instance at Red Clay, my studio, which is part of the Savannah Center thing. Every year I build a new aspect. So this year I'm like, I have 100,000. Let's build this foundation.
Oh, okay.
The next year I'm like, I have 100,000. Let's buy cement. Let's do this. That's how you build it. It's been 8 years now since I started building it. Today when you see it, it looks big. But you know how long it took to build the SCCA building? Wow. It took 5 years. It took 2 years to build the foundation. I'm telling you, now when you see it, you're like, hey, Charlie, it's big. No, but it took a long time. And it's also because when you're doing it at a young level, what a lot of young people don't understand is that we should move away from that thing where we're always looking to get big money to do things. You have to learn to build things slowly, and you have to own it. Our independence is all that we have. So if you're doing the thing by yourself and you're building it, and you have control over it, there's more you can do with it. But a lot of people think that, I will just get some big money and do. No, it doesn't work that way. The more you spend time with it, the more you understand the process and also what that thing will become.
So let me get into a little bit of politics and the Ghanaian system here. I want to understand, when you made money from the show, the art exhibition, and you wanted to start the SCC at Tamale, in terms of acquiring the land, we are in Ghana, right? A young person going to acquire land, do you understand what goes on there? How are you able to do all that? Did you have adults kind of help you supervise that area in the land acquisition and all that? Or it was did some donations coming from the government?
No, not at all. I've never had any support from the government. And I think it's better that way, at least in the beginning.
One of the few people that says that.
Yeah, it's better because you have control of what you do.
It eliminates the bureaucracy.
Yeah, it does. It's a disaster when you get the government involved at an early stage.
Wow.
So I actually, there are 3 aspects of the institution. The first aspect was the SCCA. The land which we built it on, it was my father's land. My father had bought that land 40 years ago. So when I told him, and he's a contractor, so when I told him I wanted to come to Tamale, he was excited. He was like, oh, my son wants to come to Tamale and then do something here. It will add up to the economy and everything. So I was like, oh, if you can raise the money, I will build it pro bono. So I was raising the money small. So my father built the whole building.
Wow.
Yeah, for free. So I just got money for materials and paying the workers.
So you got the stuff. You didn't give buy the materials.
No, of course, but it's come on, he's an
that.
old man.
But you know how some people think,
No. So I would work and then I'll send him money and then we buy him the materials. Sometimes when I didn't have money, maybe he'll use his money and then later when I have and I'll pay him back. It's a relationship. It's not because it's your father. He doesn't owe you anything. My father has given me all the education he can already. That's the best gift that any of your parents can give you. Beyond that, go and jump into the river for all we can. Yeah, so but that was good. So my father was very supportive in that sense. Barely do parents at that level, when their children are going to do something like that, knowing how precarious the scene is, to then now make money and then no one come spend it, because this is not a profit institution. It's free. We do exhibitions. So I put money in it.
Are free.
It's all free. Everything is free.
So you do
the
not
school,
charge anything.
Nothing. Everything is free. The schools, everything.
So
programs.
how do you pay for maintenance? I mean, it's a building.
It's work. I still work. So as of now, when I work now, the building is there. So maybe every year I'll dedicate, let's say, 10,000 maintenance. It's a gift actually to the society. We want the society to operate in a different way. Children who are going to experience. Oh, it's very. We are very.
Are you fully?
Oh, it is unnatural. The other things you see are rather not Ghanaian. This is what it means to be Ghanaian. If you go back to our post-independent era, that's what Ghana was about.
I've never felt so. How would I say? Patriotic. Am I using the right words? Like, I feel like I'm speaking to somebody from Kwame Nkrumah's time. They actually talk like that, like our grown-ups, like when we were speaking to maybe honorable friends, like when they say that, when they say those things, I understand. But I mean, a young person,
I know, but that's why young people need to spend time to revisit history and the past. But the more you go back in time, the more you realize that there is so much that has happened before us. A lot of young people these days, particularly in the field of entertainment and music, they feel so big. Oh, we're the first person doing this and that they want to own this lifestyle. But no, sometimes the whole, like all the things, many things that are supposed to happen elsewhere. Before me, there were so many artists. But why is it that when it got to my turn, I had so much opportunity that many artists before me didn't get? Sometimes when the gifts come to you, it comes with you to you at the cost of a responsibility. You then now have to find a way to redistribute it in a way that there will be more people like you that can also come up. Imagine like at my age now, with the things that I'm doing. When you come to Tamale, we have children that are coming to the center. For instance, let me bring this thing now. See, I went to, what's the name? This is an old mirror from back in those days. So I bought this in Sawam recently. No, that's the front. The mirror fits in there.
Okay, so
there are several of them. There are some here also. And this is, I don't know if you've ever seen. No, this is not a briefcase. I'm sure you've never seen this before.
No, I haven't. Oh, so I've seen this before. This is
gramophone.
Yes, but they have another fancy name for it.
Yeah. The record players and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah. But the gramophone is not a record player. They're two different.
Yeah, it looks like this one is smaller than. They are bigger, right?
Yes, they have other ones, record players that are bigger, but this is a gramophone. It's
an
music.
Antique. It says Philips.
Yes. So you see, there are some of them that are recordings of Kwame Nkrumah, tributes to Kwame Nkrumah. I have the CDs in the room and all that. So when I'm traveling, and I recently went to Sawam. There's a man who he goes around and he buys these things, and then
it's like an art collector.
Yeah, he buys these things and then he'll resell them. Sometimes you keep them.
Band.
Yeah.
Wow.
So these are things that you don't find anymore. So I buy them and then I'll take them to Tamale, put them in the museum. Children who are now coming up, who've never seen these things, they see it, they experience music differently. I even got like an old trumpet. Like
the Ghana is 50, Ghana kind of this thing, trumpet scene. Wow. Oh my God, I'm so taking pictures with this after the interview. mind, he's helping Ibrahim show it to us.
So you see all these really interesting things.
And
So
it's heavy.
it's heavy. Yeah, so imagine. So there are parts that are missing. So this is from like 1930. And these are from villages, like deep in Ghana. Like when you go into the remote villages, it's almost as if time stops in those spaces. So now that we have these things, imagine children connecting with them and learning about the history of music and all these things like that. So we are more or less like people who are trying to somehow open up the portal of time and allow for people or children to connect in many different ways.
Yeah, because if I see this, I mean, for somebody born during the time I was born, what I would do is I'm going to Google Kojo Seiju's band. And that alone will open up a lot of stories and
all
give
that.
me so much information about the music scene in Ghana.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, at one time I was having a conversation with someone. The person did mention that at first, was this Sonny or Phillips or something like that had an office in Ghana for music.
This one still works.
And I didn't even know that.
Some of this, they need to be repaired actually. I need to repair some of them.
How? But would you find somebody that can actually repair?
Yeah, there are people. I had one in Tamale that actually works. I bought that one a couple of like 3 months ago. So now here I have 4 in addition now, which will add up to what we have in Tamale. And then there are many other things that we also have. Like we have a 3,000-year-old Egyptian coffin in Tamale that we borrowed from the museum. We have like the first satellites that was sent into space by the Russians, the Sputnik. In Tamale.
How did you get that?
I also bought an old building from Kwame Nkrumah built these buildings that were meant to store food in Tamale and other places. There was one in Tamale which they were going to demolish last year, which I bought and we saved and we made it back. We made it into a museum. So like SCCA
Oh my God.
is a space for, let's say, making exhibitions. Red Clay is a studio. We have like the archives, the museum, blah blah blah. Like there are lands which I bought from the chiefs in Tamale. And then there are lands that were meant to be either residential or school or whatever. But what happens in this country is that sometimes when the chiefs demarcate lands for schools and all that, because we don't build a lot of infrastructure, the chief, when the land is dormant, the chiefs will sell it again.
Yeah, because nobody has paid.
So sometimes what I did was that I used to buy some of those lands, and then if we really say that we want to build a school, then let's keep it and build a school out of it. So as art, that's where art becomes interesting. So you see now we're not talking about drawing. We're talking about saving history. So all these things, when they're coming into art now, you see that now art becomes very interesting and like very big. So that's what I mean by the promise that art has.
Wow. I'm inspired. I've never felt like I haven't done anything for Ghana like the way I feel. Like the way I feel.
Please.
So,
we all have a role to play.
Sure. So since we promote volunteering and job shadowing and stuff like that, career activities, would you be happy to have volunteers with you in Tamale?
Of course.
Graduates, art students.
Young students, they can come from anywhere, they can stay, we can mentor them.
You have a place they can stay?
Yeah, sure. Like we can always organize that.
My job here is done. And it means that Elvis will be taking a trip to Tamale soon.
Yeah.
We hope we get sponsored for that flight. Oh,
don't worry.
I don't want to
There's
wreck
nothing
this.
in it. Don't worry.
Wow. So they're just placing the stuff back. I'm sure, I think for this video, we probably have to cut some parts. So, I would want to ask you, even though I've asked the same question in different formats, I would like to finally ask. So, let's say I'm drawing and the stuff at home. In your opinion, what avenue do you think would be best for me to at least sell just one artwork or two? Like, how do I start? I'm asking because usually the young artists are crippled due to finances and the cost of the tools that you mentioned. So sometimes they just want to sell maybe one or two, and then they can buy another brush, they can buy oil paints, acrylic, whatever. So what would you advise what can I do to at least just sell a few of my art, even if I want to sell it for 100 cities or 200? Or what do I do?
Well, it depends on the kind of art that you're making. And you always don't necessarily have to sell art. You can do other things.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
think it's always important to learn from the people who sell on the streets, the hawkers and all that.
Oh, so you
There are
advise
artists,
that?
yeah, who should find creative ways of selling the work that they produce. Sometimes even not just the work itself, but also finding small, petty trade or business, something that can give you small money.
So they should have other sources of financial.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Gaining financial independence is very important. Not relying on people to give you money. The system allows you to have full control of what you want to do. And as I said before, you need to have an idea of what you want to do in the future. For instance, I've been wanting to do this Savannah thing since I was in uni. But it took 4 years before I could gather the first money to start the foundation. It took 8 years before I could even small every year I'll do this. Like for instance, 3 years ago, I spent that whole year buying those airplanes I took to Tamale.
I was about to ask you about that.
And I'm even looking at other ones right now. Yeah, so there are things. So it's a long, it's a life.
Should you expect a train?
Yeah, train. Yeah, all kinds of things, shapes, all kinds of things. And their art is such a way that it's the level of ambition that you also bring into it. Like I've been looking at these shapes and then taking the bodies and then removing the bodies into, let's say, building parts, or using the ribs to be able to create, let's say, a dome or things. So there's a lot of ideas that come along with it. But sometimes as an artist, you just also need to explore. You need to be brave. You need to be brave. I want to do this in the next 10 years, and all I'm going to do now, between now and the next 10 years, every energy, everything that I do, whatever that comes out of it, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make sure that it ends up in this particular goal. As you go, maybe the processes might change, the goal might shift and all that, but as it shifts, it becomes better and better. It's not as if the goal has changed, it becomes better. Because when I started building the red clay...
I just remember the name I wanted to remember when you brought the gramophone. I wanted to say vinyl.
Vinyl, okay,
yes.
The vinyl, yes. Yeah, the vinyl, yes. So it's interesting how even when we're thinking about, let's say, music in this country, it's always about... yeah, but even like, have we found time to really look into the history of music, or even the history of sound in relation to our music making now? Whereas, have you asked yourself, why is it that music in Ghana, like even like the idea of recording music, there should be studios, national studios, where young artists can just go and then go and record sound. Want to explore, you can go there, you can borrow a tool. You can go to, let's say,
outside
somewhere.
it is. You have a place where you can get old vinyls and stuff like that.
Experiment.
Yeah, it's not.
That's how you produce a system that is going to last generations upon generations. So for me, I think that the infrastructural aspect and also how we use it and how people becomes part of a new cultural identity is very important to shape in the future.
That was interesting. So, I'd like to ask you, if someone is pursuing art as a career, would you say the person should go ahead?
Yes, they should. Why not? Art is one of the most interesting things anyone can do. It's not just studying art. You don't just study art to make art. You know, you study art to become more conscious and more. There's a certain kind of intelligence and sensitivity that comes with studying art at a certain level. Like when I went to Tech, I did my undergrad, I did my master's, and I did my PhD.
Wow.
So
PhD in what?
In art, philosophy of art, painting. Yeah, so the more you're studying art and reading about artists, there's so many great artists, scientists, cultural, urban planners, architects, people who are doing really amazing things over time. The more you're studying about these people and the strategies and that they use in making their work, or even the aesthetics of their work, you come to realize that, oh, the world is actually quite very simple, but also very sophisticated. So how does it make you a better person in terms of thinking as a creative? That's where the thing is.
So lastly, can you mention any organizations or associations, be they in Ghana or outside, that are supportive of African art that people can, let's say, look up on the internet or apply to maybe something they're doing, like exhibitions or programs or maybe online stuff? Do you know any organization like that?
I've I've never applied for any of those things. That's not my direction. For me, I'm always just making my work, and then museums and institutions, curators, people who are interested come along, and then we develop projects and things.
But I think you strike me as someone who loves to network.
I love to network, but I don't go out of my way to do that. It mostly comes to me. Yeah, I don't go out
because
of my way.
I can see you're going about scouting.
Scouting, I collect things. I go to look for things. I collect them. But in terms of looking at international, like people always are fond of being online, trying to connect with people. I don't do that kind of thing.
But you like to connect on a one-on-one.
Yeah, one-on-one. Like when I meet people here and I have conversations. Like for instance, there are artists here. When we did the first exhibition in Tamale, it was an old Ghanaian artist, Kofi Dawson. It was like 80 something.
Wow.
Yeah, they so rest in peace. He passed away 2 months ago.
Oh, I think I saw Gowit Institute post something like that.
Yes.
Or it was him, right?
Yeah. For many years, his work hadn't been shown on a very serious level in this country. And there are a lot of people who have done work like that and died over the years. So many architects, musicians, engineers, blah, blah, blah. So at the end of the day, if you've not created a system that allows for these practices to be nurtured and also to influence other people in a much stronger way, and at the end of the day, you're going to lose a lot of them. It's almost as if once they die, imagine everything that they've worked for. It just erases. So we are more or less, as young people, we have to take the positions of archaeologists. We have to learn to excavate, revive, preserve, go back in time. The only way we can secure the future that we desire is to go back in time. In Ghana, that's the one disaster that we have. We don't like revisiting the past. I don't know whether it's because of the wounds or the crisis, but we need the crisis. If you need to embrace crisis and the truth that it comes with, if you need to be able to create something new. That's why this documentary exhibition is important. Because Germany is one of the countries that has acknowledged the history that has come from, that history of the Second World War. So they wouldn't want any of that to happen again. But in Ghana, when we look back at what happened to Nkrumah, we've not learned anything from it. From 66 up until now, it's been a complete disaster. You know, one thing after the other. We keep talking about the same things that Nkrumah was trying to.
You seem angry at us.
At some point, it becomes frustrating, particularly when you're looking at the general system. And it's not when you begin to talk about some of these things. At some point, people think that you are either party A or party B. It's not a party thing. I'm not interested in that party system.
It's not partisan.
Yeah, it's not partisan.
If you're passionate about something.